This is Phil Coffman. I wanted to talk about aligning in Illustrator, aligning objects, and how the align tool works. Now, it's a fairly commonly used tool. It's been around for a long time, maybe even since the beginning of Illustrator. I don't know, but it's I think most people are probably fairly aware of it. But there are some things you can do with it that maybe not be as well known, and at least weren't to me until a few years ago. And so I'd like to just kind of talk through some of those, specifically the ones that I think are not as well known. But let me just start off first walking through how the aligning tool works and the options that are available to you, just kind of in a high level perspective. So let me draw a few rectangles here, just nothing too fancy. So we've got these three rectangles. Now, if I select these guys, you'll notice that up here towards the top, Illustrator brings up some contextual tools, and these along here are the align tools. There's 6 of them. There are some distribution tools as well, and you also have this under your align palette. I have this collapsed over here, but you can see the same tools are available over here if you want to use this one as well. I'm not going to focus on distribution. That just kind of would distribute these objects kind of in relation to each other. I'm going to focus more on align tools. So these 3 boxes here, say I wanted to align them to the top. Well, I just choose the vertical align top button, and there we go. My Illustrator will take the top portion of these objects and make sure that they're aligned to the top. If I wanted to align them to the center, that would center align them. Let me undo that. If I wanted to align them to the right, same sort of deal. Align to the bottom. Pretty straightforward, right? So this is pretty basic. This is a pretty commonly used tool. I mean, obviously, if you're doing, say, wireframing or anything, obviously in Illustrator, you're going to be fairly used to seeing these tools and using them. But what I wanted to show is a couple examples here of how you could expand the functionality into different areas. So say you've got this letter M here. Say, commonly thing you do in Illustrator is you're tracing over something, maybe an image, a logo, letters, anything like that, and you want to actually vectorize these things. Now, there's a lot of different ways you can do that, but a pretty common one is to just pull out the pen tool and draw it. So let me zoom in here on this M. And I want to trace this thing in here. So I'm going to get the pen tool. Let me switch over here to something that'll show up a little bit better. Let me choose this red color here. So now, obviously this M is, I don't know, I got this off Flickr. It's a pretty old, looking M. You might want to keep some of the inconsistencies, but, maybe you want this thing to be super sharp, super aligned, all the points, exactly falling in line with each other. Now, you could use smart guides. I won't really go into smart guides other than to say that it's a tool available in Illustrator that kind of gives you these hints as you're drawing to kind of make sure that you're keeping things in line. I've got that turned on. I'm just going to turn that off just so we don't have that showing up as we're drawing. And I'm just going to start drawing here. Now, I can click here as I'm coming along and start tracing the outline of this letter. I can, as I'm going, I can always hold down Shift, and when I click, that will actually draw a perfectly straight line. But let me just go ahead and finish this guy out real quick. Done. Now, I'm going to zoom in up here and let me show you something. Obviously, as I'm clicking, I wasn't paying too attention. I wasn't using Shift. I wasn't using the smart guides. These points here do not, there's an angle to it. It's not perfectly, perpendicular or whatever, 90 degrees or in line with each other aligned. And say I want to do that. Now I could zoom in and try to get that perfectly aligned. I could use smart guides, but you can only use the align tool on vector points. So these top ones here, these 4, I can grab the direct selection tool, so the white arrow, do a drag selection on these 4, and again I've got all of my align tools here, even distribution ones available, and I can just top align those, bumps it up. And just real quickly, I can come around here to all the angles here, the sides that I want to be perfectly aligned with each other. Do these here, do that to the right, do that to the left. Let me grab these bottom ones here. I'm not going to grab that middle one because I do want to extend below these others, so I'm going to bottom those out. I'm going to grab this point here, I'm going to grab this point here, and I'm going to make those centered. And let's grab this point here, this point here. Let's top align those, and let me just hide this layer real quick, or undo it. So this object here right now, maybe a little hard to see, but these lines here are perfectly straight. They've the align tools cleaned them up nicely. Even these 2 points here are perfectly in line. I could even go, so far as to making these guys here all lined up. It's whatever outcome you're wanting to do, but just the point I'm trying to make is you're able to use these align tools to clean up this letter. Now this is perfectly straight and in good shape. So think about how you can use the align tools when you're actually doing individual vector points. There's a lot of different uses. This is just one example, but know that that's available to you when you're working on just the individual vector point level. Last example I'm going to show you here is, say you've got a block of text. So this is talking about velociraptors, a very popular subject. And so we've got this block of text here, we've got these little lines, we've got a couple options here. So you either shoot back, you cry for help, or you hit the big button of fleeing for your life. So these things, maybe you want these things to kind of align in relation to each other. So maybe you want shoot back and this text blocks to be aligned here on the left. It looks like they are. Maybe you want a flee for your life button. Let's go ahead and group these together because you want to make sure that that object stays together. You want that to be left aligned, so obviously left aligned there. So that's some basic, obviously we've covered that, but what I want to show you here is how you can set how these align tools are functioning. So up until this point, we've always been taking into account that you're wanting to align based on the selection. So what I want to call out is, so let me select a few options here. Now this little drop down next to your align tools, this is currently saying align to selection. If I expand it, you've got some options here. So align to selection is the default. I've also got align to key object and align to the artboard. So let's try align to key object. What does this do? Now what it does is it lets you select out of your multiple selection which object is the key object, the one that you want everything else to align to. So in this example, let's group these two options here, and let's say we want these guys to actually be centered under this block of text. I mean, you could sit here and try to, eyeball it, but if we select that and select these two, and make sure we've got align to key object selected, you can click between these two groups. You see that it's highlighting differently, and what it's doing is you're saying, boom, I want this one right here, this it's all highlighted in pink. I want that to be the key object. That means now whenever I'm aligning between these two links down here in this paragraph, I'm aligning based on the positioning of that paragraph, that of my key object. I can do the same thing here with this button and make that selection. Again, I want to make sure align to key object is selected, and let's center that. Perfect. So everything here is now centered in relation to this paragraph up here. Now, what does align to artboard do? Well, it probably is going to be very self-explanatory at this point, but say I want this whole block to be centered in this square of my artboard. So what I want to do is I want to group those objects, come up here, align to artboard, and I want it to be centered. If I want it to be top align, left align, right align, whatever. But if I want it to be perfectly in the center, there we go. It's perfectly in the center of my artboard here. So I didn't know that drop down existed. That align to key object was extremely valuable whenever I found that out. When you're aligning buttons or little objects, maybe you're working on a wireframe, and you want to make sure you're aligning to an object and not just to the selection where everything's going to shift. You want things to relate to one particular object. That is extremely helpful. And then again, align to artboard is helpful if you're using the bounds of your artboard as a guide. So say it's a letter size or maybe a wireframe comp. Again, you want everything to be in relation to that. That's how you get that as options. So those are some examples there of the align tool. I hope that was useful to you, and great. Thanks for listening.